Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Kalanicki. If you are second and third period, you're in the right spot. This is second period. We're doing lab first. So follow these directions. Take a laptop, sign in. IXL should be your favorites. We did add it to the star on the top of your screen, so that should work. Double check that you have it up there at the star. I'll show you mine right now. Like mine's up here. If you don't have this toolbar, you're just gonna, you're gonna right click up here and you should be able to open your toolbar from there. But I have it, IXL, right up here. There it is. If you don't, check that out and we'll get you some help on that. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Sign in and you're choosing one of those, S1, S2, or S3. After 10 minutes, you're going to switch. We'll set the timer. You'll switch to a new one of these, and after 10 more minutes, you'll switch and do the third one. So again, it doesn't really matter what order you do them in, but we're going to do some of these. These all relate to equations, which we are doing in this new unit. So good luck, have fun. Pause the video, or we'll come back to it for the lesson. Okay, if this is third period, you're in the right spot. If it's seventh period, you're also in the right spot. Today's date is November 15th. Make sure you copy down your homework. We do have homework tonight with this lesson. Make sure you get a calculator and put today's date on the cover of your packet. We also have a quiz tomorrow. So today's date, November 15th, lesson 5.3. Okay. So today we are doing one-step equation word problems, a little bit of review from one-step equations, as well as working on translating word problems. So let's start with the stop and jot. Hopefully we did one yesterday. If not, we did one a few days ago. So I want you to stop what you're doing. We're going to read this question together. You're going to answer it by yourself for about 1 or 2 minutes, then about a minute with a partner. You can use the sticks to do it. And then 1 minute, and we're going to share our answers with the class. You can write on the whiteboards to write down any other answers. I'll be writing some suggested answers on this video. Take some from me, take some from your classmates, and make sure you have at least 3 bullets or more filled out. So, what are some rules you must remember when solving equations? So if I'm going to solve an equation like I did yesterday or I did on Monday, what are some rules I should remember when solving equations? Again, I'm practicing these kinds of reflective questions so that way you know what to expect when I'm looking at your reflection questions. But a lot of people did not do the reflection questions as well as I believe they should be. So, pause the video, you're doing it for a minute, and then you're doing it with partners, and then you're going to come back to the video when you're ready to go over after you share it as a group. Okay, so if you're back and you're playing the video, that means A, you've already done it by yourself, B, you compared your answers with a partner, and C, you shared it out with the whole class. So we have maybe a bulleted list somewhere on the whiteboard. Some examples that I think might be some good things to remember is, a big idea is you're using inverse operations. So if it's adding, you're going to subtract. If it's subtracting, you're going to add. If it's multiplying, you're going to divide. If you're dividing, you're going to multiply. Some tips besides rules should be just to work neatly. Use a calculator. And then we always want to make sure we are focused on the variable and making sure you are isolating it. So if this was a reflection question, the first sentence I would write down is restating this question. So what are some rules you must remember when solving equations? Some rules you must remember when solving equations are, and then I would write these 3, put a period, and call it a day. Very, very easy to write a good reflection answer. Okay, hope you guys had some good answers as well. Maybe some of you matched some of my answers. We're going to move on to the model problem, which is our first word problem. Model problem number 1. The record low temperature in Arizona is 1.6 times the record low temperature in Rhode Island. What is the record low temperature in Rhode Island? Okay. So they give us this kind of word, which also has kind of a translation component to it. And they also give us this visual, which is going to help me. Before I do anything, since this is not giving me any kind of variable to use, my job as a mathematician is to identify a variable. So I'm going to write a let statement. Let. Because we're talking about the temperature in Rhode Island, I'm going to use the letter R, just because I think it will help me remember where the R goes. So I'm going to write let R equal the low temperature in Rhode Island. I know it's a lot to write, but I know you'll be able to squeeze in it over here. So I need to figure out a variable. This is something I don't know, so I'm going to call it R. You could call it X, you could call it S, you could call it T, but based on this word problem, R seems like a good choice for me. So what is the record low temperature in Rhode Island? I don't know what it is, so I'm calling it R. Okay, so now I'm going to reread my word problem one more time. The record low temperature in Arizona. All right, and that I happen to have because it's right over here. So the record low temperature in Arizona is negative 40 degrees. Okay. Is. Now, is a clue word for a very little but very important symbol, and that is equals. It's a terrible equals. I'll try to erase it. I'll do it again. Equals. Okay, now I'm going to continue translating. The record low temperature in Arizona is equals 1.6 times. Okay, well we know what times means. Times means multiply. So I'm doing 1.6 times the record low temperature in Rhode Island. Hey, we just talked about that. What are we calling that? We're calling that R. So instead of a number here, I'm going to put the letter R. 1.6 times the low temperature, or the letter R. So you heard me reread this probably 3 or 4 times, nice and slow, as I plugged in the information that I knew. Woo. So now that I have this equation typed, I'm going to type it actually real quick, so it looks really neat. Negative 40 equals 1.6 R. Now that I have it written out, I'm going to reread it one more time. The record low temperature in Arizona, negative 40, equals 1.6 times the record low temperature in Rhode Island, which is R. So there we go. Now I have to solve it. So according to this problem, since I don't see a symbol, if you notice my lack of symbol here, a number right next to a variable means multiply. So to undo multiplying, I need to divide. I'm going to divide both sides. In order to isolate my variable, I'm going to divide by 1.6 on both sides. Get my calculator out. Hopefully you have yours out. If I divide 1.6 divided by 1.6 on this side, I will get 1. Left with just the plain old ordinary R. Negative 40 divided by 1.6 in my calculator gets me negative 25. So I could write a sentence that says record low temperature in Rhode Island is negative 25 degrees. It's a lot to write. The other option is to take my answer and just write it up somewhere over where I wrote my let statement. So I'm going to write R equals negative 25 degrees. And that's how I would write my answer. So what is the record low temperature? And since R is the record low temperature, R is negative 25 degrees. There you go. So from top to bottom, translating, solving, and then writing my answer. A lot of different steps going on there. So let's talk about number 2. And while we're doing number 2, we're going to write down a couple steps. And since you have a little bit of room here, we're going to do that. So the first step is going to be to identify a variable. What are you trying to find? Right? What am I looking for? Am I looking for feet? Am I looking for inches? Am I looking for how many something? Either you need to identify the variable, or sometimes the problem will give you the variable. They'll say use the letter X or use the letter S. So identify your variable, which means you might need to write a let statement. Depends. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So let's read it here. I'm going to read my question. I'm going to try to identify the variable. Since I don't see a letter in here, I'm guessing I'm going to have to write a let statement. So, a rock climber averages 8.5 feet per minute. How many minutes does it take the rock climber to climb 425 feet? All right, I'm looking for how many. How many what? How many minutes? Okay, so it only makes sense that if I'm looking for minutes, I'm going to use the letter M. Number of minutes. Here we go. Since I'm looking for minutes, how many minutes, I'm going to call it M. Right, how many minutes? So there's my M right there. Okay, check. First step done. Second step. Now I'm going to translate my equation. You may have to reread the problem a few times. A rock climber averages 8.5 feet per minute. Oh, there's some clue words. I see some clue words. Per, right? Per 8.5 feet per minute. Now, since the minute is here, and I don't know how many minutes, obviously my letter M, per means times. My letter M is going to go right next to 8.5. 8.5 feet per minute. Per means times. How many minutes does it take the climber to climb 425 feet? So after it did this, after the climber climbed this number of feet, he climbed 425 feet. I'm going to put an equal sign here. It wasn't very clear that this is where it should go, but that's where it makes the most sense. So I translated. You may again need to reread a few times for this one. Now you're going to solve, and we're going to also talk about doing our mini check, right, or our easy check, one that doesn't require a full check. All right, so our equation seems to be a multiplication again. In order to get rid of multiplying, I'm going to need to divide. In order to isolate my variable, I need to get rid of the number on the same side as the variable. So that's 8.5. 8.5 divided by 8.5 makes 1. And calculator's out. 425 divided by 8.5, I get 50. Go right back up to my let statement again, and I'm writing my answer. M is 50. M equals 50 minutes. And there we go. I should add that to our notes on steps. After I solve, label with let statement. All right, lots to jot up here. Here we go, that's better. All right, so step 1, identify my variable. Step 2, I wrote my let statement, which refers to what I'm doing, right? Then I translated my equation. I solved it. I went back and I labeled my answer with my let statement, and now I'm going to do my mini check. Let's see if my answer makes sense. 8.5 feet per minute. So if he hikes 8.5 feet per minute, and per means times, in my calculator I'm doing my mini check right now, and you should write it down, you know, what you're doing in your calculator, just so that way next time You come back, you know what you're talking about. In my calculator, I'm doing 8.5 times 50. I don't want to put a time sign. A lot of you did it on your last test. We're going to use parentheses to show that I'm timesing 8.5 times 50, and I get 425. And there we go. So I did the check. It's supposed to equal to 450, 425, and it does. So there's my little mini check. Have a couple more questions to work on. Pause the video if you need to. We're going to keep going. Okay, so here are these two questions I'd like you to do with a partner. My little partner symbol right here. While you're doing these together, I want you to consider these questions. And these are questions you could share as a way to talk with your partner about these problems. The first one is, what are we looking for? Is there a variable? So in this case, if you see, there's actually a letter N. And usually when there's a variable, they're going to italicize it. It's going to look a little tilted. So that way you can pick it out. If there's not a variable, like this one does not, then you're going to need to pick a letter for it. And you're going to have to write a let statement. What keywords are there? You have to look for some keywords. And what inverse operation do we have to use to solve this? So you're going to translate with a partner, and you're going to solve it. If you need help or you want some guidance, what you can do is we can try it on your own. Pause the video. I'll come back. I'll give you the two equations, and then you guys can continue as partners working together to solve it. So pause the video for right now. When you come back, I will give you the two equations if you'd like. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to go over these, or you want to see what equations there are. So I'm looking for keywords. Some keywords in this first equation are less than, and the little word is. For less than. Now, less than is a really tricky phrase. You need to put a star next to this one because less than is very tricky. Less than, we know, means subtraction, but less than actually means subtract, but in a reverse order. So if I'm doing 4 less than something, I have 4 less than you, right? I have 6 crayons, but that's 4 less than you. That means I have to take what you have and subtract the 4. So be very, very careful. If some of you wrote 4 minus n, that's not right. It has to be n minus 4. And yes, that does make a big difference. So 4 less than a number. So if you wrote it, just change it and make this notation that if I have less than, the order has to switch. So 4 less than a number. So n minus 4. Is means is. Negative 15. Is means equals negative 15. Okay. Second one. Product is a clue word. And again, number is. Little is in there. So product means multiply, which you probably already knew. We'll multiply. And is means equals. Equals. The product. Product means multiply. So the product, I don't want to see 15 with a time sign. Nope. If you are going to times it by a number, I want to put that number right next to it. If it's going to be the letter. Now, what I skipped is, hey, we don't have a variable here. I don't know what letter to use. You can use any letter, but you need to write a let statement. In this case, I'm going to use the letter X. You could use an N, but you have to have a let statement. Equals, and I'm just going to write a number because they don't tell me what it equals. They're just saying a number. So I have to have a let statement in order to tell the reader what I'm making a number. So now the product, 15 times a number, that's X, I'm going to call it X, is negative 75. Here are my two equations. If you have these down, that's great. You and your partner are going to solve them. If not, you made some errors, especially on this one with the switching. Make sure you correct it, and now I want you to solve them with your partner. Come back when you're ready to go over these. All right, here we go. So some of you again like to draw this line down. That's fine. It's up to you how you want to do it. I usually don't. Remember, you're focused on your variable, what you're isolating. I'm going to isolate n, so that means I have to get rid of the 4. 4 right now is being subtracted. So to use the inverse operation, I need to add 4 on both sides. In my calculator, very, very carefully, I'm doing negative 15 plus 4. And my final answer, n, equals negative 11. If you got it, that's great. Again, you can do your mini check, negative 11 minus 4, right? Plugging right back in, negative 11 minus 4, and I should get negative 15, which I do on my calculator. So I know I did it right. This guy, since I don't see any symbols here, 15 next to a letter means multiply. In order to undo multiplying, I need to divide. Because I want to isolate this x, I have to divide by 15. I'm dividing by 15 on both sides. 15 divided by 15 makes 1, or 1x. Again, you can just leave it as plain old x, or 1x, up to you. Negative 75 divided by 15. Again, I'm not using division signs, I'm using a fraction bar to show the division. Another little minor change to our routine. And negative 75 divided by 15 is negative 5. So my final answer, or a number, right, is just negative 5. Again, if this was a quiz or a test and you did not put a let statement, you would get points off. So be very careful to include a let statement. If I don't give you the variable, like I did here, you have to tell me what the a number is going to stand for in your problem. Now, a couple more to try on your own. These are a little more easy, and the bottom ones get to be a little more challenging. If you want to start with the harder ones, good for you. Set them up and have Miss Forza the sub check with my answer key. Or you could start with the slightly easier ones, which are just more direct translating. It's up to you. Try them out. Come back when you're ready to go over. Okay. So if you're ready to come back, we're ready to start. I'm going to start with the easier ones first. A number multiplied by, clue word right there, 2/5 is 3 over 20. Now since they don't tell me the letter, I need to write a let statement. Let x equal a number. Again, you have to do this if they don't tell you a variable. If they do, and they tell you use h or use s or use p or r or x, that's fine. They don't, you have to do this step. Sorry. Now, a number. Okay, so I use x. Multiplied by 2/5. Okay, well I don't want to put x and then 2/5. I'm going to put 2/5 times x, which means the x just goes right next to it. Means equals 3 over 20. Here we go. If you translated this, that's great. Solve it. Again, we have, this problem is multiplication. Obviously, we just translated it. That means multiply right there. To undo multiplying, I need to divide. There's a couple ways to do this division. We have divided. You can change it to multiplication, but you have to multiply by the reciprocal. And my other option is I have to squeeze this to make a little more room. It's up to you how you want to do it. Actually, I'm going to copy and then paste so you guys can see the two different ways I'm going to do this one. So I could do it, oh, watch out. I could do it by multiplying, by dividing. I would have to divide by 2/5 on both sides, which just makes it look very complex, right? This very complex fraction. But we've done it before, and it's not that bad. 3 over 20 divided by 2 over 5. It's a little crazy, but it's not too bad. The other option is to multiply by the reciprocal. So I would just multiply this by 5 over 2. And again, it's about the same in terms of messiness, but it's up to you how you want to do it. Either or. Either way, 3 ABC 20 divided by 2 ABC 5, and you should get x to be 3/8. Either way you do it, x should be 3/8. Okay. pause if you need to. We're going to keep going. The sum of a number y, oh, they gave me a variable, and -3 is -8. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time. The sum means plus, of a number y, okay, and -3. So I am adding y and -3. Because I don't really like this double sign thing together, I'm going to use parentheses. It's not wrong if you don't have them. I'm just like it that way. Is -8. There we go. All right. So I have my equation. Oh, didn't do it in 2 pieces. Here we go. Shrink it a little bit. Put the negative. There we go. Okay. This is a little tricky. This problem's a little tricky because I see adding and I think I should subtract. But if I subtract 3 and I write this right here, this actually is not going to cross out. If you do this in your calculator, -3 minus 3, that won't cross out. So that's not going to work. I want it to cross out because I want y to be isolated. So instead of, I'm going to kind of ignore the second sign and just see the -3. So I'm going to have to add 3 on both sides. This is a little tricky. That way, if I do -3 plus 3 in my calculator, I will get 0, which is what I want to get. So be very, very careful on this question. That way, y is now by itself. I'm going to get -8 plus 3 will get me -5. So my number y is equal to -5. Oh, sorry. Pause the video if you need to. Otherwise, we're going to move on from here. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of erasing so I can see the next 2 questions down here. All right, again, clue words. I'm looking for clue words. I'm looking to see if there's a variable or not a variable. The total height of the Statue of Liberty, total height, and its pedestal, okay, is 153 feet more than the height of the statue. What is the height of the statue? Lots of stuff to highlight. I think I highlighted too much. But what I don't see, and what I should be looking for, but I do not see, is I do not see a letter. I don't see a variable. So I need a let statement. Because we're talking about the height of the statue, maybe you want to use an S, maybe you want to use an H. Doesn't matter. But I'm going to write S, height of statue. Okay. And then I see a picture here, so this might help. I have the picture. Looks like the statue and this base part. The base part is called the pedestal. The total height of the Statue of Liberty and its pedestal. That's this. So I need to substitute this whole information right here, the total height of it and its pedestal all together is 305 feet. 305 feet is the total height of the Statue of Liberty and its pedestal is, so you saw the is, 153 feet more. 153 feet more. More than means what? Operation. More than means subtract. More than means add. So I'm going to be adding 153 feet plus the height of the statue. Well, we just called that the letter S. Whew, that was a lot of tricky words, all for a very simple equation. The total height of the Statue of Liberty and its pedestal, that's 305, is 153 more feet than the height of the statue. Okay. Now that I have this, I read it a few times, I'm now going to solve it. Because this is adding, and I have a positive 153, I'm going to subtract 153 on both sides. Again, isolating my variable, my letter S. And again, if you need to put the bar down the center of the equation, it's up to you. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But that way, this will cancel out. I'll get 0. And I get S equals, and again, do some subtraction. Huh, interesting. Interesting. So the height of my statue, and if I wanted to come back up here and label, height of my statue is going to be in feet, so I'm actually going to label it 152 feet. Starting this unit, we're definitely going to be very focused on labels. If you don't have a label, it's actually going to be wrong. So be very, very careful. Pause the video if you need to. We're going to continue on. All right. So now, last one. You make 75 cents for every newspaper you sell. How many newspapers do you have to sell to buy new soccer cleats that cost $36? Interesting. What I first noticed, and it was my first step, is there is no variable. So I need to start with this. How many newspapers? Well, I guess since I'm looking for how many newspapers, I'm going to call it N number of newspapers. How many newspapers? I don't know it, so I'm labeling it N. N is the number of newspapers. Okay, now I'm going to reread my problem again. You make 75 cents for every newspaper. So I noticed that 75 cents every, another word for every could be each. Each newspaper makes me 75 cents. So I'm going to put, maybe not the dollar sign, but the 75 cents for every newspaper or for each newspaper. So I get 75 cents times each newspaper I sell. That's how much I make. And I want to know how many newspapers will I sell if I want to buy soccer cleats that cost $36. I have to set this equal to $36 in order to figure out how many newspapers I need to sell. I get 75 cents for each newspaper that I sell, and I want to equal $36. It's how much money I want to have. Okay, so now I'm going to solve it. Since I don't see any symbols, obviously this is multiplication. I just figured that out. So in order to undo multiplication, I'm going to have to divide. I'm dividing, again, isolating my variable. Since 75 cents is on the same side as my variable, that's what I have to get rid of. I will get 1 when I divide. 75 cents divided by 75 cents. The other side, 36 divided by 75 cents in my calculator gets me, and again, labeling my final answer, looking back at my let statement, N is the number of newspapers, so I'm going to write 48 newspapers. So again, just to summarize our lesson for today, going back to the first equations, make sure you're using inverse operations, you're working neatly, you're using a calculator, you're focused on the variable and isolating it. I think the most important lesson for today is there a variable? If not, you're going to have to write a let statement. And then again, taking a lot of care and time to translate. These are not easy questions to translate. You have to take your time and read carefully and reread and read it again and read it again. And then make sure you're double checking and you're looking at your equation as you read it one more time before you start solving and checking. All right, I hope you guys had a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Make sure that you work on your homework tonight as well as your reflection question. Restate the question, write in complete sentences. I will be definitely checking them tomorrow or the next day. So be sure that it's done, and I will go over them very carefully when I get back. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you soon.